Good evening and welcome back to The Witcher 3 for more books and notes reading. As you may or may not be able to tell, I got to Toussaint finally, which means I finished the main story. As I mentioned in the latest Isaac video as well. Not long after I got to Toussaint, there was a merchant who had a bunch of books which I didn't have yet, and I thought I might as well buy them all then and there instead of, waiting until I found them throughout the world, because I wasn't sure if I could find them all just from random loot. So we have a bunch of new stuff to read. I'm just gonna go through it in the order that it's in the list. And the first book is The Civil War in Toussaint. Kind of a long one to begin with. The year 781 marked the final end of elven rule in Toussaint, the closing of an era that had lasted over 1,500 years. The elves abandoned their ivory cities and left for the mountains, taking with them all that they could and destroying everything else. Whatever they could not take and did not manage to demolish or burn, they cursed. The last elven sovereign, Divothoff, hundreds of years old yet fair as a youth, was defeated. Weeping over the slain army of his forever young brothers and sisters, he agreed to pay homage to Ludovic, the first human king of Toussaint, who, though young, was as shrunken and ugly as the knights after Sauvine. Don't know if I'm saying that right. Putting on no end of airs and graces, Ludovic boasted, "Look, the proud elf shall bow down before me and kiss my royal feet with humility." To degrade Divothoff even further, Ludovic decided the homage should take place in the elf king's barely abandoned palace. The throne on which Ludovic now boldly lounged bore still smouldering marks from the fire set by the elves, who had sought to burn the whole palace down as they left. So the proud elven king bowed down before the human king and offered him a sacrifice of bread and wine, as well as his sword and shield. Spewing out merciless mockery all the while, Ludovic received this homage, then immediately ordered his guards drag Divothoff beyond the palace gates and throw him down the stairs as if he were a beggar. Witnesses claimed the proud elf remained calm throughout the whole event, but when left alone, Divothoff wiped the blood off his face and vowed cruel revenge on the king. Revenge that would come from stone as cold as the king's heart. Yet these ominous words bore no fruit, for in the year 782, before the homage was renewed, Divothoff drew his last breath alongside his remaining soldiers when the Toussaintois decided to celebrate the anniversary of the surrender of the elven sovereign with a pogrom of non-humans on the slopes of Mount Gorgon. Few survived. The next book is Kikimores, Truths and Myths about the Insidious Insectoids. Observation has shown that Kikimores are the most organized and hierarchical of the post-conjunction insectoids. Their workers follow the orders of warriors. They are all subjects of the queen, which seems to control the behavior of all members of the swarm, even though she remains hidden deep in the ground. Considering the small size of this species' cerebral ganglia, which functions as a brain, one may hypothesize that Kikimores possess a sort of hive mind, making them similar to ants. Sorry if there's a noise in the background, but I think Rucola found something to play with. Probably some small piece of trash. The next book is Katakans, a monograph. Before we sink our teeth, so to speak, into our analysis of the Katakan, the creature to whom the present work is dedicated, by way of introduction, let me present to our less experienced readers what exactly vampires are, and what they are not. To our great displeasure, a great many myths concerning these creatures have arisen over the years, and the popular tales about them have served only to make popular superstitions and falsehoods. In the common folk's imagination, vampires are dead men and women arisen from their graves, wraiths driven by an unquenchable thirst for warm blood. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. These creatures first came to be on another world, arrived in ours centuries ago, and have since learned to live among men and have evolved at our side. The widespread belief that vampires must drink human blood in order to survive is flat out wrong, though they do in fact often partake of our vital fluid, for human blood affects their physiology as alcohol does ours. A vampire's bite does not turn its victim into a vampire, a state of affairs which would in fact be counter to logic, for it would mean the world would soon fill with vampires as they multiply at an exponential rate. Running water presents no barrier to vampires, not even if it is cold, for vampires are immune to the forces of both heat and cold. Now for the most important matter, vampires have learned to live in the light of our sun, which is not harmful to them in the least, though they absolutely never shimmer or glisten when struck with the sun's rays. Pretty sure that's a Twilight reference. Next is, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be read in Italian, a Code Duello. Noblemen. Presented below is a set of rules for dueling which every self-respecting gentleman should follow. Although their nature is that of an honorable agreement, failure to respect them shall bring infamy and shame to the name of the dueler and exclude him from all respectable social circles. This code applies throughout the whole of the Duchy of Toussaint. Course of the duel. 1. The parties present their seconds. Each of the parties is entitled to 1 second. 2. The parties decide whether the duel ends when first blood has been drawn or when one of the parties surrenders. In brackets, let it be remembered that in Toussaint, by order of Her Enlightened Highness, duels fought till last blood are punished by immediate imprisonment. 3. The challenged party selects the weapons for the duel. The challenger is obliged to accept the choice of the challenged party. 4. The parties duel according to the rules agreed upon. The seconds ensure proper course of the duel. And 5. When the duel is over, the seconds announce the winner and the loser. Note, it is strictly forbidden to put forth any claims, blood revenge included, based upon defeat in the duel. The duel is commonly regarded as an instance, putting a definite end to the dispute. The next book is called The Fall of Hubert Balaste. Hubert Balaste, I guess. In the sun-drenched Duchy of Toussaint, near the Coronata vineyard, lay the estate of Baronet Hubert Balaste, an honourable knight in the service of Duchess Marta. Hubert served as a knight-errant for many years, and vows were his greatest delight. He swore to do things so grand they curdled blood of other knights. The Duchess finally recognized his courage, and not only awarded him with an honorary title, but also granted him land. Hubert thus had a place of his own on which to settle down and wait till his time came with dignity. He could find himself a wife and sire descendants as befits every self-respecting hero. Unfortunately, once he had lain down his sword and shield, Baronet Balaste began to seek other diversions. And so he indulged in games of card and dice, and at times even bet on dogfights. Then, one day, when fortune abandoned him, he decided to not 1 or 2 gold pouches, but in fact his family's entire estate. And he lost everything. To add to his already unhappy state of affairs, Hubert Balaste, who was not one to take defeat lightly, flew into a fit of blind passion, donned his armor, and enlisted at once. Fortune, alas, smiled no more favorably upon him at war than it did at play, and an arrow found its way to Hubert's leg. Then he died of gangrene. The next book is the Ducal Chronicle, 1st edition. Ducal Chronicle, tome 56, Lamas Sauvin, 1268. Excerpts. In the month preceding the celebrations surrounding the festival of the Vat, the ducal couple and a delegation of notables embarked on a neighborly visit to the court of Queen Calanthe of Sintra. The visit had both a social and a political dimension, for the Duchess was hoping Queen Calanthe would follow the dictates of international protocol and repay with a visit of her own, preferably during the above-mentioned festival, thus gracing the celebration with her royal presence. The ducal couple was accompanied by both daughters, Siana and Anarietta. It is worth mentioning here that both infants are sprouting like bean poles, and it shall not be long before it will be necessary to find them husbands. In the case of the elder daughter, Siana, this should not prove a problem, as suitors will flock from all over the civilized world for a chance to be the husband to the future Duchess, especially when they see her portrait, which will not even require much embellishment. Things are somewhat different in the case of young Anarietta, who is overly thin and furthermore auburn-haired, so ginger, I guess. The hope remains, however, that time will add to her charms. As for character and imagination, neither girl is lacking in either quality in the least. The next book is On Hunting Basilisks, a Compendium. In our lands, that is to say in the fair Duchy of Toussaint, the hunting of basilisks has a long and storied tradition, one reaching back to the dawn of our present history. Attesting to this is a note written by one Zenon of Triton, I don't know, a leather worker, in the year 1023. In it one finds mention of a commission for a corset to be fastened from hide of that winged serpent called Basiliskus by some. See Vedetto Fiari, manuscripts through the ages 1278. While lesser hides could come from beasts felled by age or hunger, the costliness and expense of this corset would have necessitated the skin of a basilisk taken in its prime, and therefore required a hunt. Without the engagement of a witcher, or as a last resort, a knight or a mercenary, such a hunt would have perforce meant the gruesome death of the foolhardy hunter. Yet those adept at the task, witchers chief among them, hunted basilisks and their cousins, cockatrices, with great success, thinning their numbers till a mere handful remained. To give but one example, in the year 1100, basilisks of the Regulus platinum subspecies dotted skies all across our land, yet in the present day only one exemplar still lives. Next is Guide to the Vineyards of Toussaint, Volume 1, the Sansretour Valley. While in the stunning Duchy of Toussaint, one should not forget to visit Castel Ravello, whose grapes lend their vibrant flavor to wines such as the Hervelus, Fiorano, Pomino, and the famous Est. Should white wine be one's beverage of choice, I wholeheartedly recommend the excellent offerings of two fiercely competing vineyards, Coronata and Vermentino. If one seeks Beauclair white, popular in the north, one should seek out the Castel Torricella vineyard, which produces and exports it. Unfortunately, a severe economic crisis led to the bankruptcy of several distinguished vineyards, such as Corvo Bianco, known as Gwynserbin in the elder speech. O their supreme Sepramento, and Tufo. Let us hope each and every one of them finds a passionate new owner who will restore them to their former glory. Next is a note. Announcement from the Office of Internal Revenue of the Duchy of Toussaint. The Office of Internal Revenue hereby announces a limited live auction to be held regarding the sale of a piece of developed real estate and accompanying agricultural land located in the Caraberta Woods region, having been left to the ducal treasury by the late Count Crespi, who departed this world without any heirs. Due to the unique nature of the Bellegarde estate and its important role in the production of wine, bringing great fame to the duchy in all corners of the world, only subjects of the Duchy of Toussaint shall be allowed to partake in the auction. To all knights errant and other such men of arms, be it known far and wide that the services of voluntary keepers of the peace shall be needed. Minor problems are expected to arise during the transfer of the above-mentioned real estate, and said problems, for their dissolution, could require the application of direct physical force. All volunteers are asked to report to the field office of the Procurator General of Toussaint near Plegman's Bridge, that is to say, to the place where the auction shall be held. Next is Noble Houses of Toussaint, Volume 57. Sangreal, alternatively Sangreal, literally royal blood. The legendary line, which some trace back to the first lords of the lands now lying in Toussaint and northwestern Haakland. The first mention of Wilhelm the Bold, this line's founder, comes from elven manuscripts found during reconstruction of the Beauclair Palace in 1095. Since this source, like all things elven, is unreliable and should not be taken into consideration by historians, the existence of House Sangreal must be considered a mere fable. Salvares, or Salvares, D of the Regulus Platinum crest. This line takes its name from Salvar the Lame, who was made a count in the year 1189 by Duchess Caroberta for his service to the ducal throne. The die Salvares line's crest depicts a Regulus Platinum, one of the so-called silver basilisks whose existence is highly suspect. Its classification as a species considered erroneous by most zoologists. Torricella of the Two Towers crest, an ancient line whose founders most likely first settled the lands of present-day Toussaint around the year 984. They waged fierce war against the elves until the 6th decade of the 11th century, when all of what is now Toussaint fell under human control. Next is Gwent, a history. Gwent, for many a diverting game of cards, for others a noble pursuit, for some a crippling addiction which devours their every coin and every waking moment. These last can be found most frequently among the dwarves, the game's inventors and most passionate devotees. Their devotion extends to Gwent's paraphernalia, its cards most of all, which they craft with great care and skill. In fact, cards painted by dwarven masters are often considered miniature works of art. In past times, they devoted equal attention to whittling the clubs which contestants once kept at their sides, to bash each other about the head with in the case of an argument. As brawls grew less common, the clubs became implied threats more than used weapons, until eventually falling into disuse and near oblivion. Today, Gwent players can be found almost everywhere, from the Skellige Isles, where the game was introduced by the druid Ermion, to the Northern Realms and the Nilfgaardian Empire. In Gwent, the play of cards mimics the dueling of two armies. The playing field is divided into two parts, each split into 3 rows. Nearest to the center stand units who fight at close quarters. Behind them, archers and other such ranged attackers. and furthest back machines and creatures used for siege purposes. Both players wield decks made up of a minimum of 22 unit cards and a maximum of 10 special cards, and each must also contain a leader card. The player who wins the toss of a coin, originally the dwarf whose wife has the longest beard, plays first. Each player draws at random 10 cards from his deck and then is allowed to redraw 2 of these before the laying of cards begins. Each round is won by the player who has played cards of the greatest value. The first to achieve 2 victorious rounds wins, meaning a maximum of 3 rounds are played. The winner's prize is agreed upon by the players before each match. Most often, the wager is a bounty of coin or a rare card. The heart of the player's armies, the unit cards, come in 3 types: close combat units, ranged combat units, and siege units. Each such card is assigned a strength rating and may additionally possess special abilities. There are also special cards which have no strength rating, but instead influence the course of the game in other ways. Unit cards depicting famed heroes not only have unusually high strength ratings, but also have the added benefit of ignoring the workings of all special cards. These are the rarest and most coveted of Gwent cards. Most frequently, they must be won from top players or purchased at a great price from collectors. The cards in Classic Gwent are divided into 4 factions. The Northern Realms, leader Foltest. The Nilfgaardian Empire, leader Emir var Emreis. Monsters, leader Eredin Breakglas. The Scoia'tael, leader Francesca Findabair. Next is a journal of research into Archespores, which are right now probably my least favorite monster. Day 1. I have stumbled upon an extremely curious species, the venomous Archespore. So far, I have managed to distinguish 3 of its varieties, distinguished by colors: green, the most common, yellow, and finally black, which not only exhibit the most aggression, but also show the extraordinary ability to pollinate plants near instantaneously. Day 5. My research into Archespores continues. I think I have reached the point where observation is no longer enough to bring satisfying results. The species attacks mainly using a mandible located in the center of its flower, although when highly threatened, it may also spit toxic fluid. I was also able to discover Archespores are particularly sensitive to fire, which may prove a useful piece of information regarding how to neutralize them if necessary. Day 6. I have made up my mind. Tomorrow I shall try to obtain a sample of the fluid. I have already begun preparations. And I'm guessing he or she never lived to write another entry. Let's do 2 or 3 more. Next is Ithlinne's prophecy. Behold, For nigh is the time of the sword and axe, the age of the woven blizzards. Nigh is the time of the white frost and white light, the time of madness and disdain. Ted Terad, the final age. The world shall perish amidst ice and be reborn with the new sun, reborn of the elder blood, of Hen Iker, of a planted seed, a seed that will not sprout but burst into flames. As tuath esse, so shall it be. Watch for the signs, and I say unto you what signs they shall be. First the earth will run with the blood of the Anshade, the blood of the elves. The next one is called Forgotten Species, the Protofleder. If you take a fleder and magnify all of its most primitive traits, you will get a Protofleder. This beast, the fleder's distant ancestor, arrived here from a parallel sphere centuries past, yet unlike the fleder, has remained untouched by any post-conjunction evolutionary processes. In our time, protofleders are extremely rare, the more suitably adapted fleders having taken over their niche in our biosphere. Protofleders are thus lesser vampires. Their massive, wide jaws constitute their main weapons, their sharp claws coming in a close second. Similarly to their more developed cousins, protofleders rely on their instincts rather than intelligence and are quite sensitive to the scent of blood. All the usual means of fighting vampires, such as vampire oil, black blood, and silver weapons, apply to them as well. And the last book for today, The Last Basilisk of Its Kind, A Study in Ecology by Boris de Salvarez. Based on my observations, I have concluded all species, be they plant, animal, or even insect, are inextricably intertwined with one another. It is no mere coincidence the felling of the beech woods and the vanishing of the roes who in them once dwelled led to the disappearance of the sterling basilisks as well. The principle even holds true for ladybirds. For the betterment of learning, I conducted the following experiment. I eradicated all the aphids in the palace cabbage patch using a lye solution. Within a few weeks, all of the ladybirds once present in that patch, and there were hundreds, migrated to a neighboring field. A simple experiment, yet it gave incontrovertible proof of my hypothesis. Okay, and that is going to be it for this one. I say it every time, but there are still many, many more books and notes and letters to be read. But I'd like to keep these videos somewhat consistent, especially since I'm getting relatively close to finishing the whole game. I'm just working my way through Blood and Wine, and then I will be done, and then I will finally get to read the character entries and the Beast Cherry. Thank you for watching and for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Bye bye.